If there's just one word that defines society today, it's busy.
Absolutely.
Whenever you talk to somebody, it's like, I have no time, I'm busy, and I'm tired.
Yes.
And for me, I think meditation was really hard when I first started for years.
Yeah.
Because I think that the way it is taught is a half-sided truth of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that you just sit down and you just empty your mind and you just sit there. And it was so hard for me for so long. I would sit there and twitch, and then your body, you start getting weird itches and your foot hurts and you're just uncomfortable. It's like, and you start feeling all these weird things that you never normally would feel. And it took so many years for me to get to a point where I understood that meditation is a state of being. Mm-hmm. And it's like a muscle that you build over time. We have this idea that meditation is sitting down for 10 or 20 minutes and emptying your mind.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about how meditation becomes your whole life, because it becomes a part of just your daily being in the moment at all times. And that meditation that you do in the morning, connecting, right? Because it's not like you just sit down and you just sit there, right?
Yeah,
It varies in ways that you do it,
Absolutely.
but you have the same idea of connecting with yourself, and you're not scared to go into yourself now.
You're not scared to meet yourself.
So that's also a question for most people. It's like, are you ready to take your life to the next level and be honest with yourself and really take a look at your whole life from a different perspective and be like, okay, what is serving me and what's not? So what is your experience with meditation? How do you, because you mentioned that you do your meditation in your morning.
I was terrible at it most of my life because I was running away from myself. So sitting alone with myself really was too heavy for me. So for most of my life, I was the type of person that was like always on the go and always trying to escape whatever was coming at me. So instead,
most of us do.
Yeah, so instead of like being able to sit alone, I would keep myself busy. I would run to a store. I would get on the phone with someone. I would wake up in the morning and be immediately on my phone. I would wake up in the morning and distract myself with anything that I could distract myself with. But as I started, when I became single again, and I had much more time on my hands, and honestly, even like well into my personal development journey, because that started like 10 years ago, I still couldn't sit alone with myself, even though I was like growing and doing things. And then when I had the time to sit alone with myself, I finally decided to like try it. And the first time I tried it, I ran away from it. And the second time I tried it, I lasted a little bit longer, and then I ran away from it. And then now I'm at a point where like it's a part of my daily routine, and I actually set my alarm earlier. Even if I have to be up at the crack of dawn, I go 30 minutes ahead of that to give myself the time to sit alone with myself, my thoughts, process my day from yesterday, just be in silence and stillness. Just me, my coffee, the birds, and then I can start my day more clear-headed. But I notice that when I wake up and I have to exit and get ready and I don't get that 30 minutes to myself, my day has this like constant lingering effect of like, I needed that stillness. So then I have to find time throughout the day, whether even if it's in my office, to just sit there in that stillness and like put everything down, all technology down, everything is down, and it's just like me, my thoughts. Sometimes during that time, I'm inspired to write, like I'm inspired to like blog, journal, anything, but it gets me more back into like my creative feminine self in those moments. So that's what I think for me most of my life, running away from myself was missing.
I've struggled with this idea of perfectionism, right? And one of the reasons why I got into meditation and into health and into everything I do is because I desperately needed those things in my life. I don't think that we go into these practices because we're feeling really great and everything's exciting. And for me, it was anxiety and depression and my own health and my own mindset. And there was always this feeling that there has to be more to life. Like, this cannot be it.
Me too.
And I constantly feel like the more that I go into these ancient practices, because things like meditation and breath work and all of this has been around for as long as we can track back humanity. And it's these things that have been part of us for so long that we now in today's society have totally shut out, right? Because we created a totally fake world around us for hundreds for thousands of years, we lived in a certain way. We were always connected with nature. We were out there. We're moving. We were part of these communities and tribes.
Yes.
And now we live in a society where everyone is isolating, and we don't have that community.
Nope.
We don't have that support. So many people feel alone.
Yes.
So many people feel just tired and unmotivated.
Yeah.
Because how can you truly be excited about life if you have no energy?
Absolutely. And I feel like you hit the nail on the head. It's like
surrounding yourself with that community that kind of pushes you and promotes you, and like there's so much to be said for like community filling you up.
Yeah.
And when you surround yourself with people that are like-minded and people that have, and like everyone has a story. I mean, I say it all the time, like we all have stories and we all have hurt and we all have joys, but like that's what connects us, is that we all have that. They may all look different, but we all have it. And when you allow yourself to be vulnerable and connect is when you can allow yourself to be filled up. And then it kind of brings you to a new place where then maybe you're not so scared to be alone, because you know around the corner is that community.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is when you're naturally isolated all the time, sitting in that stillness is scary. Because now that we're talking, I'm reflecting back and I'm thinking, when I was running away from myself was when I was a stay-at-home mom. And the only thing I was surrounded by was my kids and my home, and felt very isolated. And it wasn't until I got to a very dark place where anxiety has consumed me most of my adult life. But I got to a place where I really didn't recognize myself anymore, besides trying to be the perfect wife and the perfect mother and the perfect everything, that I didn't even know who I was anymore. And when I finally decided to go on a journey that I don't think I even knew I was going on, I just knew I needed more and I was craving more, and I knew this couldn't be all that there was. When I decided to go on that journey was when I surrounded myself with community and I surrounded myself with people. And then over time, not overnight, I was okay with sitting still, because I knew that if I sat still for that period of time, after that was community. So you become less afraid of being alone with yourself when you know you don't have to always be alone with yourself. So I feel like that's an important point that you made. Like, community really does allow you to then be alone, because you know they're there. And when sometimes the fear of meeting yourself really comes from the stigma of society and the stigma of our upbringings and the stories that people have told us in the past about ourselves. And we hold on to that so much throughout our lives, and we hold on to childhood stories and you're too much of this and you're not enough of that, that to go in and really sit in that stillness and meet yourself, there's so much fear in who you're gonna see. And the thing is even, listen, everyone is flawed, right? And everyone is imperfect. And to sit here and think that you have it all figured out means you have it the least figured out, okay? Because every day you're evolving and becoming a better version of yourself, as long as you're putting in the work, obviously. Yeah. But when you finally meet yourself and you meet those flaws, you start to see it's not so bad, you know? And then those are the things that make you, is those imperfect moments. And I always say, as you get older and you start the journey of becoming, you're really starting the journey of unbecoming. All the stories and the layers and everything everyone told you to be, or you thought you had to be, and sitting in that stillness with meditation and allowing yourself to meet yourself is where you really start to unbecome those stories. And then when you finally meet yourself, you're like, oh, actually not so bad. Now we're a work in progress for the rest of our lives, but that's okay. At least you know who you truly are.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to even meditation, because for me, the conversation is about our consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And I love going back to science for some of these things, because people often think of meditation as this voodoo thing, but now we have so much science, right? And even going back to Einstein, when he said that everything around you is frequency, it's a vibration. But then even when you look at the math, right? E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared, which if you just break it down means that energy and mass are interchangeable. It's like water turning to ice or evaporating. It's the reason why when we use meditation and manifestation are actual thoughts manifest into matter.
Yeah.
And there's so much science now behind showing how our thoughts can influence reality in different experiments where we can actually mathematically prove that our thoughts are shifting the mathematical probability of what should be happening.
Absolutely. But then
for
there's a
some
level of trust that people need to have also. It's like
Right.
you don't always need the facts or the
But the point is
formulas. We have them there.
So, because for most people, it's like, and I always say, until you actually feel it yourself, it's really hard to believe something. I can give you all the science, I can give you all the math, I can give you all the facts, but until you experience
Yeah.
yourself, it means nothing.
Yeah.
So even for me, when it comes to meditation, going back how I used to sit there and fidget and wanting to be anywhere else but sitting here
Yeah.
with myself, now my meditation has come to a point where when I'm sitting there, it's, I guess the best way to put it is like a cocoon of love and calm. It's like this time where I can be sitting in a meditation and I don't want to stop. If I have
Yes.
more time, I will push my meditation longer because
Yes.
I am just overwhelmed with peace. I feel like I create a bubble from the world around me and all that anxiety and all the thoughts and all the things that are bothering me or the troubles, whatever. I choose to put them aside. So I think with the practice of sitting with yourself, you learn how to realize that, okay, just because I got a thought doesn't mean I need to give that thought any credibility.
Yes.
Right? So when you're a stay-at-home mom and you're sitting home alone,
Yep.
you start having a lot of thoughts.
Of course, yeah. All
The
day.
problem is that you start giving those thoughts energy.
Yes.
And those things start materializing. And it goes back to often, going back to Einstein, right? He says, the biggest question is like, do you view this universe as positive or negative, as friendly or unfriendly? Because that's going to be the answer to your question.
It's really gonna dictate your
Right?
life, because at the end of the day, it's what is your outlook on life? Is your glass half empty or half full?
But then
Like-
that reflects into real life stories where we all know these people, right?
Yeah.
The negative ones,
Yeah,
where
yes.
everything is always going wrong. Whatever could happen against them will. And once again, how does that make sense?
I
The
know.
probability of that is
I've
so
actually
weird.
thought about that, where I'm like, really?
Like, how does
Again?
it keep happening to you?
Yeah, like, how?
It doesn't make any sense.
And then I'm like, and then I remember actually, in between my first and second child, I had a miscarriage, and I was,
sorry about that.
thank you, and I was devastated, like because I couldn't fathom how my body would do that to me. It was like, I had no control over that, and I was like, how could you do that? Like, it was almost like I felt betrayed by myself.
Yeah.
Like, how could this happen? And I went into a very dark place, and I went to therapy, and that's really where my journey had started. And I remember reading books, and I started to watch The Secret, and started to really learn about like manifestation and the control I had over my thoughts. And during that time was when I was like, hold on a second. Like, I'm a person who loves control, okay? Like, I need to feel like I'm in control. And that point, when I had a miscarriage, I didn't have control. So that was like, how could you do that to yourself, right? And in that moment, I realized, wait, you have the power over your mind, and you have the power over your thoughts. And for every time you have this thought of fear or negativity or why me, victimhood, change your story. So like in that, throughout that journey, and through learning more about myself and learning the quality of having positive thoughts, and not just saying you're positive, but like putting in the work. Like, it's really cool to be like, I'm a positive person. That's great. Put in the work to be a positive person. And I was a positive person according to myself, but I wasn't putting in the work, and I wasn't changing the way I lived my life, and I wasn't changing the way I looked at people and society. And I'm still in work on that. You know what I mean? And this is like going back to 2008. And now, even now, I'm just like, oh, I get it. And even in those moments where I have that little bit of negativity that sneaks in, I'm like, I don't turn it off. I see it, I sit with it, and then I'm like, but that's not you.
Just let it go.
Let it go.
Yeah.
Just let it, and that's the beauty of what I do for a living, is I let it just move through my body. So on those days where everyone has off days. No one's like, I'm not rainbow and sunshine all the time. And when I have those off days and I'm teaching a class, my intention before teaching that class is this will move through me. And by the end of this hour, we are done.
Yeah.
and it happens. If you set the intention, whether it's through meditation or it's through movement or it's through journaling, however you do it, when you set the intention and you put the work in, it happens. And it's like, you're human, like you're gonna feel the negative thoughts, but let them move through your body.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I think for me, that I reflect on is just discipline. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I have really struggled in my life, because for a long time I looked at discipline as almost a negative. Like, it made me feel, not that it's negative, it made me feel negative. It made me want to rebel.
Yeah, me too.
Until I realized that discipline is the strongest level of self-love. Mm-hmm. And once I started looking at discipline as self-love, it changed everything for me. Yeah. Because I'm not doing these things because I have to do them. I don't have to do anything. I'm doing these things because I know that in the long term, the benefit that it's going to bring into my life, the levels of, I just want to find as many tools and ways to live in a state where I'm not anxious, where I'm not feeling bad, where I'm not stuck in these negative emotions. Yes. Because you said, like, from social media and everything, everyone's like always like, you're so positive. And I try to be, absolutely, but I have my days.
Yeah, like there's days where I'm like, uh-oh, I'm in it. Like, I'm like, no one talked to me today. Like, I got to get this out.
But then in those days, I feel like you have created the tools that you need to get out of it. And the question is, like, how quickly can you move through these emotions and snap yourself out of these bad days? Because at the end of the day is going to be whatever you make of it.
Whatever you make of it.
And even going back to what you experience with your miscarriage, I think it just reflects how, is this happening to me or for me?
Exactly.
Because in my experience, some of the worst things that have happened in my life have opened up the most beautiful doors when I was able to see it from a different perspective and stop being the victim.
Yep.
Right? That victim mentality.
That victim mentality.
Like, this is happening to me. How can this be happening to me? Why is this happening to
me? And why
me?
has this person done this to me?
Yeah.
And it's always, that's not, if you change the outlook, like you said, is why is this happening for me? And where am I going to learn through this experience? And what am I going to benefit through this experience? And how is this experience going to make me a better person? When you start to look at things like that, and it's not your initial reaction because you're human. So your initial reaction is to go immediately into victim mentality. Yeah. But when you start practicing the tools and you start doing the work, you're able to flip it quicker. Yeah. And you're able to take the time to say, hold on a second, that's not what this is. And let me find what I can learn from this experience so that I can make the necessary changes to really live the life that I want to live. Yeah. And that's really like what changes your life, is when you're able to start to change the narrative of your own stories. Because it's like your victimhood is not, that's a story. And when you decide to like change your story, then you can take that and you can make it your power. And that's when you can change your life and you can start to make the changes you want that you've been desiring so much. Because the other thing is, as women, we tend to like not live a life we desire because desire makes us feel like guilty. Mm-hmm. Like, it makes us feel that sometimes we have stories of being not worthy, not good enough, or if we start to chase the things that we really crave and desire, are we being selfish? Are we not being a good girl? Like, so for women, it's so hard to really tap into that desire and live the life you want, but to do the work, you have to go back to the basics and change your story. And then you can live a life that you desire and not say to yourself, I'm a victim, when it doesn't work out for you. Because then instead you can look at it and be like, oh, that's because this is what's supposed to be for me. Because in the end, we're all supposed to have what we want.
The whole victim thing, I think often I talk about how things don't really start to change, and when I say really, things will not change until you take full responsibility for your life. So for me, it was really hard because I had to look at myself, and I like to think that I'm driven by wanting to be better. Yeah. I really want to be a good person. I want to be somebody who can move past through negativity and uplift and be able to just hold my friends, my community, my clients in a space that I think is good. Yeah. And that can be hard reflecting on your past because I had to admit a lot of my own faults. And admitting how many people I have hurt and how many flaws I've had and how many, I don't want to say wrong decisions, but looking back now, I see how maybe the place that I wasn't coming from like maybe I thought I was coming from the right place and I wanted to help. And that leads me back to the idea that, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
And I definitely have always had good intentions, but I didn't execute the right way. I didn't know how to execute things the right way, how to support people the right way, and sometimes pushing my own beliefs on them where, hey, like this is gonna make you feel better.
Yes.
And we talk about this all the time,
about
how
time.
you have to lead by example and really become that person that you talk about being and just show people that there is this way of being and you can feel better, you can have more energy, you can become a happier person overall.
Yeah.
But are you willing to do the work, and are you willing to look at yourself and see your flaws?
Yeah.
Because once you see them, you can unsee them.
Unsee them.
That's when the change starts happening, because you're like, wow, like I cannot believe that these are the things that I've been doing, and this is how I carried myself. But then you have to be, I think, gentle and patient with yourself.
I was just gonna say that.
And just be okay. It's like, it's okay that I've made mistakes. It's
Yeah.
okay that I've done these things and I wasn't my best self at all times. And I'm not my best self now. It's
No.
it's gonna
We're
take me
always evolving.
forever
It's like
to
We said
just
earlier, like you just never know who you're going to be
Absolutely.
in a matter of time, because as long as you're evolving, you're doing the work.
Yeah.
And it's like it's exactly the conversation we had before we started talking, but it's literally having grace with yourself in the process. And like you said, like we know that there's been moments where you're not your best self per se, but like what does that mean, not your best self, right? Like it really just means being human. Right? Like we all start out, we're born into this world, and then, you know, we have our parents, we have society, we have siblings, we have judgments, we have who we think we're supposed to be. We have all this that we pile on top of us, and we're just being human through the process. But the more you have grace with you being human and you're open to change, you don't have to tell people who you are. You just be who you are.
Yeah.
And just in that being, you're leading by example. It doesn't have to be like, I'm such a great person. No, it just be the best version of you and keep growing and evolving and changing and learning and being open. I can't say enough, be open to people coming into your life and you learning from them as much as you're hoping they learn from you.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been plenty of people that have come in my life that I've learned from that I'm like, wow, I actually learned that from them. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and the more open you are, you just have to lead through example. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to talk.
Yeah.
You just have to be. And I feel like the more grace we have with ourselves in our humanness and in our imperfect, flawed selves, I think that's really how you lead. Because so many people are beating themselves up, I being one of them, for not being what I thought was perfect and not living a perfect life or a perfect marriage or being the perfect mother or the perfect friend or sister or daughter. And there is no perfect. Like there isn't. So we're all aspiring to achieve something it's intangible, it's not real. So you have to be the best you and be open to learning and have the grace with yourself. And the achievement is never perfection because it's not real.
Right. And I think that just covers like not being attached to ideas. Yes. Because I think some people, you know, and often people have qualifications to be attached, that they have a reason to be attached to certain ideas and teachings and things like that. But being, I think, a student of life, even the way that I hold my meditations and the way that I talk about health and mindset and all these things consistently, there's shifts because you learn more, you experience more, you learn new things and new practices, and it gives you a deeper understanding, which can sometimes, you know, sometimes you can be wrong. And I think it's okay to just be like, hey, like, that wasn't the full truth. And in the moment it can feel that way, and it's totally okay.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think people get so attached to their ideas or who they are that they don't want to let go.
No.
It's
And
too,
that stops
So
us
from
too
evolving,
much.
because then you have to unattach from the ideas. And how can we grow if we're attached to this one version of ourselves?
absolutely.
You know, so like you can't, I mean, even for me, I was attached to one version of myself for most of my life, my adult life. And when I finally started to detach from that, hell broke loose, honestly. Like it was like, it was just pure chaos in my life. And my decision making was like, in the end, it led me to where I belong. But during the process, I wasn't making the best decisions. I was at times a little reckless and impulsive would be the appropriate word. But it all led me to here, and I'm grateful for it. But if I didn't have the grace with myself to let myself make a mess, I mean, I say it all the time. I always like say to like my clients and my friends, I'm like, thank you for just letting me be like raw and messy. Like that's how I would describe myself. Like I'm just like really raw and messy. And in the past, I would have never let myself be that way because raw and messy sounds negative. But it's really just real. And that's really who we all are underneath our perfection, or our, you know, what we're trying to pretend to be, our idea of perfection and what we're trying to be. And when we really allow ourselves to just get a little messy, you really learn, like, and that's where you really meet you. And that's the beauty of meditation. To like circle back to where we started, is that when you start to do that, and you don't have to be like reckless and make a mess to do that. I mean, it's just, I mean, my version of reckless is like pretty PG, but still, like, it was pretty reckless for me. And when you, or maybe like PG-13, but when you get back to it and you start to really sit in that stillness, when you're finally okay with sitting there, you see it's like not so bad, you know, and all of a sudden it becomes a practice you look forward to, as opposed to the stigma that was placed on it by society. And it's like, ooh, you're doing meditation or like some voodoo, or no, I'm just like sitting with my coffee in the morning. Like, everyone relax. Like, don't be afraid of it, you know, and then you start to see it. And the more you start to learn about it, and you learn, like you said, the science about it, and you learn what you can create in those moments and where the creativity flows through your body in those moments, and you can tap into the feminine, where we sometimes, like I told you earlier, like I live in the masculine so much that like in the last 3.5 years of my life, I'm like, I got to meet the feminine version of myself. Like, that's why I love to dance, because that's where I meet her. And that's where she comes out and she's like, and I'm like, oh, this feels so good to be feminine.
You remember that you're a goddess.
You remember, like, and in those, when you're in the go mode and the hustle mode, like society has put us in, you lose sight of her. And when you get to meet her again, it's like, oh, this is amazing. Like, this is who I want to be. But you need the balance of the two of them. And that's it. And then you find that in your meditation. So it's like important when we start to really learn to sit with ourselves, to just meet all the versions of ourselves, because we're not just one. We're always evolving.
So I think we've spoken about so many different things about life that certain people can seem all over the place, but that's where the beauty of meditation ties in, because it affects every part of your life. It changes the way that you look at life. And I really hope to change like this stigma around meditation and it being this boring thing that you just sit there. And I want people, especially younger people, to realize that there is more to life.
Yeah.
The whole, the social media, the parties, the going out, this fast life, this idea of busy, I personally don't think that that's what we're meant to do, and I don't think that that's what makes us happy. And for me to truly find my calling and to step into this energy and find all of this, I had to take a step back from my life, because my life was totally different.
Yeah.
My friends, the way that we spent our time, the places that we went, the things that I thought were valuable to me. With time, I realized it was all a facade that was sold to me as I was growing up, and that the life that I want to live and what truly makes me satisfied and fulfilled is not even close to what I thought it would be. My life is a total opposite of what I thought it would be when I was younger.
Isn't that beautiful though?
Everything's changed.
I think that's the best part about it, is when you actually start to make the changes and you realize the ideals you had and the values that you had and the things that you held as like who you were, like I'm this person, blah, blah, blah. And then you start to see like those things aren't really what's important.
Yeah.
And when you take a step back and it's like, listen, it's great to live your life with passion. And it's amazing to have a career that you love. And it's amazing to build things that you love. But it's also amazing to sit in stillness. And it's also amazing to have balance. And it's also amazing to say, you know what? I can take this day to myself. And that's okay. Like sometimes we have guilt about doing that. It's like, oh, if I take a day off, I'm gonna feel like I'm not doing my job, or I'm not good at what I do. But sometimes you need that so that the next day you can come back stronger and you can come back more balanced than you are.
So many yeses.
Yeah.
I think at the core of everything that I believe and I teach, and what I want people to be inspired to do, is to see rest in a different way. Because rest, sleep, and recovery
Yeah.
is the number one thing that
Yes.
influences everything about your health. And so often people talk about exercise and nutrition and all these things, and absolutely they're really important.
Yes.
But if you're not properly sleeping and resting, I don't care what you say, you're not going to be the best version of yourself, period.
No, and the thing is, nutrition, exercise, movement, and rest and recovery and sleep, they're all necessities.
Absolutely.
So in order to have a fulfilled life, you need to have balance in everything. And that's something I didn't really get most of my life, honestly. Like, in all areas of my life, I was like, balance, what's balance? I'm like, all or nothing. No, you just can't live your life like that. Like, you need the balance of all of those elements. It's like the mind, body, soul balance. Like, you need the balance of all of it. And you need the rest, and you need the sleep, and you need the recovery, and you need the downtime as much as you need the movement, and to put healthy things inside of your body, and to exercise, and to keep your endorphins high. You need all of it. If you come up, you gotta have balance and come back down so that you can meet yourself in the middle. And it's the only way to live a healthy, balanced life. Like, it's like you don't wanna crash, you know what I mean? So it's like you wanna come all the way up, but like you need to meet yourself halfway. And I think that's the beauty of what you want to teach, honestly, is especially gearing it towards younger people. Because when you think about it, like, even for me, I didn't find it until like I started to get into my 30s. And then I was like, okay, like, something's not working here. Like, let's figure it out. But like, you don't want to get to the point where something's not working. Like, sometimes it's easier to let it become part of your practice. So when things are not working, you can manage them better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think often we also have talked a lot about meditation, but one of the vital parts of the meditation that I believe is breath work.
Yes.
Because people don't realize how the way that you breathe affects your nervous system. The way that you breathe can either get your sympathetic system going or your parasympathetic system. So the question is, are you going to be relaxed and resting, or are you going to be in fight and flight?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people also in society, right, we have a lot of mouth breathers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mouth breathing is one of potentially worst things that humanity is doing right now.
Mouth breathing. You can hear it sometimes.
But you can also tell a
Yes.
lot about a person that the
Yes.
way that they breathe. So for me personally, because I've been doing breath work for so long, the way that I breathe throughout the day is very different than most people breathe. Even through my sleep, I wear the Aura, I track so many things about my body and my body temperature, and it just goes, I like the science behind it, so I can actually show people, like, look, this is
Scientific proof.
this is proof that it works.
Yeah.
So even when I'm doing my meditations, I have graphs of my heart rate dropping. If there's times when I have anxiety and I will go into meditation and you'll watch my heart rate drop from like 100 into like the 70s.
Yes.
And a lot of that is done through breath work. So I want people to understand that it's the little things that you do every day that often you don't even pay attention to that have the biggest effect on your health.
Yes.
Right? Even as a dancer, you know, how many people walk the wrong way and mess up their hips and their back just from the placement of their foot, because it's such a small thing that you do every day that it has a major effect. It's like when you take your hand and you're like rubbing it on an edge, right?
Yeah.
At first it's fine. It doesn't hurt.
And all
And then
of a
30 minutes later, it's like
You're irritated.
you're irritated and it
Yeah.
hurts. And if you keep going, you'll have a gash. And
Absolutely.
it's the same thing. It's like the stress. Stress isn't bad. But we live in a society that's consistently stressed. So let's find ways to manage it.
That's the thing, is people don't know how to, I mean, even I didn't know for most of my life how to process stress or how to let stress move through my body. And stress would just build up. I mean, I suffered from panic attacks for a long time, and I thought I had a gallbladder problem or something wrong with me, because it would sit in right here, like, you know what I mean? Like, and it would sit in basically in my soul. And like I would feel it and I wouldn't be able to move or straighten out my back, and it's because I didn't understand it. And it was just letting me know something was going on that I wasn't comfortable with. Something was happening that wasn't working for me. And I needed to become more aware of how to learn what that was. And at the same time, learn how to manage my stress. And let it move through my body instead of getting it trapped in certain spots. So it would be trapped here, it would be trapped in my back. I would have all these like little like, I mean, in Italian we call them like maladias, but like little ailments that I was like, I don't know what this is. I think I'm lactose intolerant. I think,
makes sense.
and nothing ever added up. Like, and I was like, it's actually just stress, and I don't know how to manage my stress. And I'll be honest, like, breath work is not a strong suit for me. Like, it's a constant practice for me, and I have to be like, are you breathing right? Like, even when I have anxiety, like, I have to teach myself like the 7-11 method of like inhaling for 7, exhaling for 11, just to calm my heart and to calm my breath down, because if I'm not thinking about it, it gets away with me. So it's like we, as a society, it's almost like we feed off of stress, and like saying I'm stressed is like a cool thing to say. Like, I'm so stressed, I'm so overwhelmed. It's like, it's not cool, guys. Like, we have to learn how to manage it and handle it so that it doesn't affect our relationships, and it doesn't affect who we are as people, and it doesn't affect who we become. Like, sometimes who you present to the people you care about is that stress and not who you really want to be, you know? And it's like, there's been plenty of times I walked in a room and like I look like I'm in my head, because I am in my head, and I don't know how to manage what's going on and all the thoughts I'm having. And until you start to do things like breath work and meditation and meet yourself honestly and see yourself, then you're able to say, all right, like, I'm feeling I'm in my head. Before I walk in this room, let me manage this so I can walk in and not make people be like, what's her problem? You know, like, you want to walk in and people be like, oh, there she is. Like, and you want people to feel good about being in your energy. So you have to learn how to manage your energy, basically.
And just going back to everything that you said about stress and the ailments, that's just another example of thoughts materializing into matter. Yep. There's so many times where even some of my favorite are like the yoga stories, when people are doing yoga and they hit a certain pose and they just start crying.
Yeah.
And they just get this wave of release, because these are, once again, things that we don't talk about, how your tissue stores physical pain and stress. And most people don't realize how many of their health issues are caused by their own mind and by their own thoughts. So even, we haven't even gone into like sound healing and the bowls, right? Because that's even another type of meditation where you can use those frequencies to like blast that into your body, and that will help release. It's like it will physically help you release all that trapped energy.
I will legitimately leak out of my eyes during a sound bowl
experience, because I don't even know what it's hitting, but during the process, all of a sudden, I just have tears streaming down my face and colors. And if you just let it happen, like sometimes it's like, you're like the science of it, and I'm like the magic trusting of it, right? Like, that's what makes this so good. And I'm like, I'm leaking and I don't know why, but it's amazing, you know? And you're like, you're leaking because this is happening. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. There's a reason why I'm like it's happening. But if you just trust and let the magic happen in those moments, it's like what releases in your body is just stuff you're holding on to for so long. I mean, God, there's so much stuff stored in your body, just like, it's just too much through like, just from life. Like, listen, not to be like cliche, but you have one life, or maybe you don't. I don't know. You probably have a bunch of lives, but you know, you have one life right now while you're conscious. This experience. You have one experience that you're consciously in, and allow yourself to make the most of it by doing what will release the most in your body. Like, I mean, it's like I tell people when they come into my classes, I'm like, you didn't walk in a fitness class. You think you're walking into a fitness class, but over time you'll start to see you're walking into so much more, because it's like in those moments you get to meet yourself, you get to release the stress is flowing through your body. It's therapy, and all of these things are like unspoken therapy. It's so funny, because I feel like, you know, whenever I'm posting like my morning walks and stuff, I'm like, my favorite therapy session. It is. Because absolutely talking and therapy is important, but nature, just the grounding. I think the biggest thing that people forget is that the earth has a frequency, right?
Absolutely. Take your shoes off.
Yeah, the Schumann's resonance. And we are so connected to our environment, but we become so out of touch with that. And so many people are like, why do I feel so empty? But then you go sit in the woods, And it's like, wow, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
How strange.
Yeah. It's like just
Go to the beach, walk on the sand, listen to the water, like go for a walk outside, listen to the birds, like look at the butterflies. Like there's so much in nature. I say this all the time. I have this conversation with my girlfriends all the time. I'm like, I'm not trying to be corny, but it's the truth. Like when I go out there with the birds and I listen to like the birds chirping and like, I told you before, I feel like Snow White sometimes. Like, it's just that magic that's all around in nature. It's so healing. And like, if you really get back, it's like what you were saying, like, just get back to basics. Like, that's how we started. We started like being raw and messy. We didn't have technology. We had community and we had tribes, like you said, and we had meditation and silence and nature and real raw humanness. And then we layered it on with busy and stress and technology, and now we're at social media and we're at all of these things where now it's like cool to be stressed. Where like back then it was cool to be in nature. Like so just change what's cool for you. And watch, when you start changing what's cool for you and you start living your life like that, you don't talk about it, everyone else will start to catch on. It's like you make it a movement, you know?
Yeah. So I think just going back to like what we're trying to do here is help more people understand what it is that we're talking about and why it's going to be so beneficial in your life.
Absolutely.
And kind of kill off the stigma that this is boring, this is unnecessary, this is just sitting. It's like, no, this is the first step of you really taking full responsibility of your life and realizing that you are the master of your own life.
Yeah.
And when you decide that you want a better life, that's when you're going to get a better life.
Absolutely. Take radical responsibility.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And just let's step away from this idea that a pill or a magic substance or this like one thing is going to change your life, because there's a lot. And this is not like the easiest thing, but nothing great is supposed to be easy. And if you're able to change your perspective, you're going to see how much fun the process can be and get excited about it rather than overwhelmed.
Yeah, and it's like you have to know that there's so much more, so many more pieces involved in the puzzle of life than you, stop. There's so many more pieces involved in the puzzle of life than a quick fix. It's like, it has to be something, I mean, it has to be something you do every day, and especially for women, like we have so much going on in our lives. I mean, not that men don't either, but it's like women have this like story.
It's just different.
Yeah, it's different. And like to break through like being a mom and being a wife and being, you know, when you're a business owner and being a daughter and a sister and all of these roles and trying to always manage them in an effort to do all of that, it has to be a constant work in progress. And there's a million pieces to that puzzle. It's not, there's no quick fix, and it's an everyday thing. I mean, some days you're gonna be good at it and some days you're gonna suck, and that just has to be okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of people are going to be, I'm excited to see how, like the results and how once people really internalize the benefit, how they're going to actually want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just giving more information about the little things, because at the end of the day, it's all about the daily rituals and the habits that we have. I think so often people want to do these major changes and flip their whole life upside down, and we forget that it's the little things, it's the small habits every day. It's like, are you waking up and drinking coffee right away, or are you drinking lemon water and some apple cider and getting your body just some time to like recover, and what do you see valuable?
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping that through our conversations and everything that we're creating, people can just get the tools that they need to feel better and not feel so, I don't want to use the word helpless, but having a roadmap to like, okay, this is what I need to do to feel better. And these are the things that if I put in the work and the time and the dedication, can have a really major effect on their lives. And through this, you know, the talks that we have about the feminine energy, right? And all these things, like this is where it all comes from. I think the more the conversations that we're able to openly have and be vulnerable and share the fact that none of us are perfect, but we can be better. And that's okay.
And it's also, you know what the other thing is? It doesn't look the same for any of us. And being okay with that and understanding that in these conversations and in these tools that people are learning, no one's going to use them the same way. So what's meditation for me may not be meditation for you. But as long as we're all starting the practice and starting to learn and doing what feels good for us, no matter what that looks like, then you're living a more authentic life, and you're living a life that's your best life. None of our best lives are going to look the same.
Yeah.
And none of our meditations are going to look the same. And none of us are going to find the things that work for us, and it's going to be universal for everyone. But as long as you're searching and you're taking that stillness to meet you, then I feel like that's where the magic happens. It doesn't have to be the same for any of us.
I feel like this container is going to be really magical.
Yeah, me too.
And I just hope that people come in with just an open mind and an open heart.
They will.
And the rest is
Yeah.
going to be it's going to be incredible.
Yeah, it's gonna be where the beauty happens. I feel like anyone that walks in, they may not know what they're walking into, but they're gonna trust, and that's all you need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Good.